Hello, everyone. This is Curt Doolittle from the Natural Law Institute. We're here with Brandon, Francis, Martin, Noah, Bryan, John, Luke, and Tyler. I don't think we have anybody else right now. This is June, June, what the hell? This is Thursday, January 25th. This is Thursday afternoon, and this is one of our staff meetings. We're in the process of discussing, Bryan, you want to tell us what we're the process of discussing so I don't have to take words out?
Sure. So there's been this theme that I've been pointing towards, and not just pointing, like display word and deed, traveling, going to find the best big towns, small cities. I started that in 2021 and found white, conservative, beautiful, cute downtown, foot traffic, car traffic, economic activity, uh, mostly conservative and white, and they've kept the Walmart out of their downtown. And where we've gotten to is that there's this importance of beauty, that even though we're a bunch of guys that have a high degree of truth, falsification to get truth candidates, we're morally good guys, that third virtue to bring it together of beauty is something that has been somewhat missing. And I think it's missing for a lot of people, and women want it, men want it. We want to protect, maintain, and defend our beautiful commons. And so that's the theme that we're going for Natural Law Conference in the spring. And I went to go see a property that was, had beautiful pictures, but it was not beautiful and in person.
You got catfished by a property, dude. Okay, what the heck?
So I was saying that it's important that if we have an opportunity to identify gentlemen's estates, trophy properties, things like that, that the owners have put the time, energy, and intention into making a very beautiful property, and they're looking to sell it, that we do what we can in our group to acquire those properties. And then Brandon chimed in, and I'll let Brandon chime in.
I was saying that that's a great idea, and we can move the ball forward faster than people realize, because we already have all of the tools to steward the type of communities that you're talking about. We want to embed the people who we are teaching to be agentic in these places, and then have them work in those places until they're the people that are asked upon to do things when things are necessary to do, because the competence is obvious. And you being catfished by a property, like that is how we do economics in America.
Yeah.
Pretend up front.
Right.
Right. I sell you a bunch of stuff. I pretend to sell you a bunch of stuff up. You can have all these things, and really you can't. Someone's gotta, a couple of people, but they're offering you a landscape to gamble upon, and we're not doing that. You can have exactly what you can create. We will teach you how to keep it, because right now everyone's stealing all your shit.
What we're describing is buying a distributed campus. Instead of having a campus located in a specific spot, it'll be distributed between these different locations. And instead of going to a university where you sit in a desk and a guy talks to you and you write papers, you'll be excuse me, you'll be building things, learning a trade, learning new things. Maybe you're more towards the white collar, you'll be learning how to invest. I think the guys should be learning all of this while they learn natural law, and we'll be able to do it because their labor will pay for it.
Yeah, we educate the whole person based on demonstrated capabilities. You're not just, it's not going to be in classrooms chanting a bunch of bullshit, but stuff
You
that
guys
you can
are pretty
actually
good. You make
use.
some good Marxist community organizers.
Funny enough, I've got their main handbook open here on my other tab, but
yeah, it's they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, it's different when we have to find people who want responsibility, and they have to find people who don't. And unfortunately, they're fishing for in a much denser pond. Anyway,
but what I'm saying is that there's this thing about women that their nervous system's on high alert until they can get into a space that's beautiful, you know, all the pillows on the couches are fluffed and everything's just perfect. And then supposedly like their nervous system, their fight or flight or everything settles down. So in the same way, I'm not saying that we can't take on trophy properties that need maintenance and whatever, but there's obviously got to be good bones. There's got to be good breeding. There's got to be the things that I think that our team is particularly good at identifying. I mean, think about how skewed the real estate market is. If you'd be just an absolute fool to go buy a commercial building in downtown Atlanta or something like that. Like if you don't understand the bigger picture of what's going down, or you wanted to get into Washington, D.C. or the D.C. metro area, if you're foolish enough to go buy stuff in New York, I mean, I'm happy that, you know, okay, go ahead and continue your Ponzi's there. But when we think about strong towns and this, what I'm saying is like Americana that we could trace all the way to the founding fathers, or that beautiful aristocratic of the so you had the antebellum, but you also had the style that was in the Northeast that was very aristocratic as well. So imagine as we had that westward expansion, and everywhere the aristocrats built or slowly built their towns that then became cities, and they did it with considerable foresight. Then anyway, I know some of them
It's
fall
just
under
funny,
like
you know,
heritage or whatever, but the point that I'm making is that we either build it from the ground up, or we identify what's beautiful and has all the right ticks, all the right boxes. Basically, we're the smartest shoppers out there, and we create a high value network from the falsification, the via negativa and the via positiva that we can see, because that effectively what we're doing as men is we're predicting very well.
Here in Portugal, we have a lot of places similar to what you described, and they're usually based around vineyards and olive groves and fruit groves. Our problem is these are all high technology farming, and nobody wants to do the work. And they're owned by people in their 60s, even into their 70s, and they're desperate to sell. And I see the prices going down. They're profitable businesses. You're not buying property, you're buying a business that includes the property, and it's self-sustaining. And you know, the thing right now is there is a shortage of skilled labor, and even farming is going to be primarily a skilled labor job in the future, because we're going to be working with a lot of machinery and robotics. So what we're doing is we're creating essentially a parallel economy and an educational tool at the same time.
Yeah, I want to underline that as well, this parallel economy, and other guys can chime in too, is that the more we're prepared and the more that we do not need the government and their fiat Ponzi scheme, the better we are. So if we have hard assets that are productive, and we don't care if they turn the switch off and it goes into either a hyperinflation or a major disinflation, if our guys are in a position that they don't necessarily need to work for food, it reminds me of when the USSR broke up. It was particularly because they had a bunch of family farms that people were able to survive that destabilization. Now, I know it was done on purpose, or at least that's the way I see it. And I think they're trying to bring it to America so they can buy up public assets and make them private. I think that's going to happen. We can front run it and be more prepared if we convert dollars, or if we're talking to people that have owned the property and there's some smart conversation about how do they transfer the asset, or how do we make it so it's available also to their family and their heirs. I just think that we're the right guys to handle this transition, where we can kind of reset what is truly valuable and allow this fictional stuff to fall away. And then, especially with fixing the 6 holes in the Constitution and the other stuff, I just really want us to come from a position of power where we do not need, and it's very, very clear that what they're doing is parasitic, predatory, and that they're just a bunch of liars.
Yeah, I think both end is the way to go. You know, your both end stuff here. You're specifically talking about the properties, right? And property can be loose, but you know, we want to be looking for those properties that already possess the qualities you're looking for, right? But we also want to be looking for properties that can be converted into, or can be, or those qualities can be, you know, fostered and developed on the property, because that gives investment opportunity for both ends of the scale, right? If guys want to do the financial investment, they can join up with us to get those properties that are already in good shape, right? And not physical properties, all kinds of properties, right? Business, everything, right? We can broad approach that. But then the guys that want to do the sweat equity thing, we also want to start plugging them into projects as well, so we can develop, these properties, doing the work group things like they're doing in the Pacific Northwest. We want to start creating opportunities around that as well. One of the, we talked before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about some of the reasons that the right isn't working together. And we talk a lot about federation. One of the threads that's emerging for me in this conversation here today is we've been good, and we're really good at using falsification to facilitate exclusion, to identify what we don't want to interact with, right? We see that in the purity spiraling when it's taken to dysfunctional extremes, right? What we're not doing yet, and what we're not, pushing really hard on yet, is using falsification to identify opportunities. And I think that's the next big shift, right? Because anywhere we see that exclusion is taking place, that means we're also creating a gap in there that represents an opportunity that can be seized. And I think a lot of that's going to come into play when we're talking about how do we start doing this alternative economy. It's not so much we have to go without those things that we're pushing away for us, as it's how do we fill that space with our good, beautiful, and true.
Yeah. And to tie into Noah's thing
Beautiful.
on building aristocracies, I think what would be really interesting, maybe even fascinating, is to say, I've got ancestry that's in Iowa and Nebraska. So what if I could call the cousins back that there's some property or opportunity that shows up in Omaha, Nebraska, and I call the cousins to return home, right? And it encourages more of my cousinry to return to what could be a new homeland of some sort. Because to some degree, in our westward expansion, in our desire for economic opportunity, which was largely a male drive for agency or higher agency, we've gotten a little far out of our roots, right? And then there's been a whole bunch of outbreeding, not near enough near breeding, which when we had European villages was quite easy. So this is a very conscious effort to bring us back, so that you're relying more on your cousins. We can build out what would be an American version of a karetsu. So it's somewhat of a family-owned business. And I think what we could do as Natural Law Institute is to help do a little bit of historical research and encourage this. When I talk about genetics, geography, and grammar fields, get the genetics to come back, because that then says, okay, here's this opportunity, but it's not exclusive, but it is encouraged that since this is from, these 4 or 5 families, that the cousins and the descendants of these 4 or 5 families come back, and that we help to sell and to package the whole thing. And hopefully it's close to, or could become part of a strong town network.
I really like this line of thinking.
I love it.
I'm intellectual, so I tend to think about intellectual activism, but this is real activism on scale that people can participate in. And it's turning into a really nice spectrum of offerings that we're producing that people can get behind. So the more complete your set of offerings, the bigger the tent of people of different classes and interests can participate in. I really like it quite a bit. So we started out with Bryan, you talking about finding a property, and then Brandon says we could turn this into a system, and Luke came in and said this is why this is good and positive. This is not the direction I wanted to go, but I love it. So it's hard to argue with. I cannot do anything except support it, because it creates a real world reason for organizing. The thing I think about though is we have a serious business to run here, because everything you're talking about requires capital. And some of it requires debt. So we have to think about that from how to arrange that. It's one thing to talk about good ideas. It's another thing to make them existentially or operationally possible. Making this operationally possible, once you have a market to sell to, is pretty easy. So if you have a sale, you guys are identifying a market we have to sell to.
We're retraining the workforce. The boomers need to stay in the workforce for 5 to 10 more years to retrain the craftsmanship skills in the generations below them, because they don't exist. If we put the workforce on properties to restore them, they'll be acquiring those skills.
So
We're also bringing back high trust, and we can calculate that for them.
Mm-hmm.
So is this how you see us expanding? Is to see a vehicle for our expansion? What do you?
I kind of see this as an end state. I would love to have a physical location for the institute, for the training of, let's not get into the women part, at least training of young men, boys and young men, right? To raise the next generation aristocracy. But like you said, Curt, that requires a lot of capital, which is capital that we don't have right now. So when I look at this, I tend to look at the implementation side of things, right?
If you send 6 guys to a church to fix it and to steward it, in 36 months, they will own that church. There's a democratic process. They will vote each other in. They will bring in a congregation of their own. If you're bringing skills and putting the stained glass back up and keeping the place clean and inviting a congregation and teaching the children what we would teach them, doesn't cost anything but your time.
What I see is we're pursuing the right direction by what we're doing with John and getting the guys into groups to get stuff done. This is especially good for men who aren't yet in a family unit. And then the other side is pursuing the strong families, where you're already a successful whatever, and you're a family man, you've got kids, maybe you're actually the grandfather, as Bryan pointed out, you're the elder generation, boomer generation of your family, and you're worried about the legacy below. So that's the other side. It's getting the 2 groups, basically the upper middle all the way down to the lower middle. So we get the whole middle class carved out there and active. And once we have the manpower, the other things start to fall into place. What I suggest is that we focus on getting that manpower, and the opportunities will present themselves.
Our workforce isn't, they don't have jobs. They are white men.
Yeah.
They're all sitting at home doing nothing. I got a bunch of jobs for you.
We get a couple hundred families and a couple of thousand guys, and they're spread out all over. They're not just sitting there waiting for us to tell them things. They're out there observing and orientating in their environments, and they're feeding opportunities back to the pipeline, where they could say, there's an opportunity in my neighborhood. It's too big for me. Send me help, send me guys, or I want to share it. I want to share this opportunity. And this is what we have to do. But first we have to establish the network, and then we can reap the benefits from the network. And I think over the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to be establishing that network will be our primary time and energy focus.
Our first push for the organization website will be to get people to get together with people in their proximity over the next couple of months, and then attempt to produce attendance at the first event in April from those get-togethers. Hey, we'll go together to this event, etc. And then the same in between the events. Go ahead, Bryan.
I'll take a swing here to try to clarify. I do this real easy thing about yes, no, and maybe. And on this yes side is effectively narrative. We talk about it as being education and CogFem and whatever, but it's narrative. And this is certainly some applause for Noah of saying, look, Truth AI is probably our most powerful tool to combat the onslaught of just the clown world narrative type stuff. I think some effort and energy from our best and brightest, or whoever we recruit or give them equity or whatever we can do, we should make Truth AI happen. It's the right time. It's the right funding that could happen based on, we already have a lot of that work together for it. That's what we that's how we do yes. That's how we answer the narrative is a Truth AI. On this side, I think Noah's other idea of aristocracy is really strong. What I thought was a bit missing from it is to provide the boomers with something that they're willing to trade, exchange, barter, buy, whatever. Yes, you can get them to a conference. You can maybe get them to sit down. But if you can, or we can, almost like a Truth AI, start doing the diligence, the due diligence of here's their 1,500 cousins, here's the makeup, here's like the full accounting, that type of thing. There's going to be value in that aristocracy that creates some version of a hierarchy, or Brandon, as you were saying, training so that you can hand off, and so there could be some line for their descendants. I think it's very important, and I think the boomers that are holding on to all their unproductive assets and their toys and stuff are kind of in their stage of reevaluating life, right? Now, between the yes and the no is the maybe. And that's where this economy shows up, and that's where trades and exchanges come up. But as Curt says, in terms of organizing people, that's what business is about. What if the middle is about a business that organizes the organizing of businesses, or something like that, which is kind of what we were talking here. And I think there's a lot of value in folk coming from the lens of beauty and realizing that, you know what, as much as there's scum, there is still a lot of beauty in America. There's a lot of beautiful families. There's a lot of strong families that have been holding it down, that have these strong towns, that have not succumbed to clown world consumerism, hypergamy, any of that, and that there's a lot of opportunities there. And from those opportunities, by our ability to help organize people to have reciprocal trade is beautiful, because it's the only thing that's scalable, and it doesn't create retaliation cycles. And normally, or you could say genetically, it seems that mostly white Western Europeans are those that do it the most naturally. So we're the right guys for all three of those, to reset aristocracy and get it back on course, to focus on beauty. And then last thing I'll finish with is that Luke made it so clear that if the lens of our future is mothers and fathers who love each other and produce children, that's the only fucking future we move forward through.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love that this, can you guys hear me? I love that this is it's a more expansive vision to give people. Like, I either want to put this clip on my YouTube channel or have you guys come on and talk about it. Because I can see how this expands from the local groups thing. Okay, we got a local group here, we got a local group there. But then we're saying, all right, we want to buy these estates, these beautiful estates. We want a beautiful estate in every state that's ours, that belongs to us. And you can get, like Tyler, when I recorded the interview with them, he was talking about how they are already getting asymmetry because they can just dump 12 guys or 10 guys to do work on a property. And nobody else can do that. Everybody else has to pay for the labor, which kills them. So you can, if you get an estate in the state of Washington where these guys are, or whatever, near there, they'll fix it. If it's dilapidated and broken down, they'll fix it up in a year.
Yeah.
It'll be, and then that's our spot. That's our, I mean, you start having a tribe where you own assets. Your tribe has resources, has power, has network. It's a more expensive vision. And then at the end of the day, for each personal man, it's, I actually have a hope, and my descendants have a hope of that lens you said, Bryan. We have strong families. We can actually do this regardless of whatever garbage is going on at the federal level, which we have solutions for too, but that takes time usually.
Yeah, and if
I
you're a young
absolutely love
man,
it.
you got a choice. You can go to university where they'll castrate you, or you can come join us and you're going to hang around a bunch of great men for a year. You're going to learn trade. You're going to be taught about all these important and valuable things. It's not going to cost you anything. You're not going to leave with debt. And you're going to leave maybe with some equity in the organization itself. Our problem will be picking which young men we prefer.
Yeah.
Because I think the
I
demand
think
will outstrip the supply.
one of the things that I learned from all these training business, it's the way that's being held right now, right? Which is you pay a fee to get in. It's actually disadvantageous for the instructors because especially it's physical training, right? Let's forget about the online training, which has infinite scaling, but also has its own limitations. With this physical training, you have to hold the course if there is a minimum number of people show up, but there's also a maximum number of people that can show up to one of these. Because just take firearm training, for example. I'm not going to be able to teach a whole 100-person class, maybe 12, 16, right, with some coaches. So it's almost like the airline business in that you're kind of squeezing this narrow margin. For the idea that we're just talking about, I wonder if there's some way with crypto technology or whatnot to have ways such that these successful young men, once they get out of this institution, the teacher's pay or the instructors, the institutes, is essentially tied to their future. And that allows us two things, right? It allows us to pick the potential of the young men. And it also gives them a way to say, hey, I'm young, I'm starting up, I don't have the money to pay the instructors, but here a percentage of my income in the future goes into this institution. And they're essentially a vested member.
Yeah.
And it turns the whole education dynamics on its head. And with that model, these universities selling bullshit degrees cannot operate. They have to be selective of their student bodies because they don't get paid upfront.
The only thing I would try to add here that we keep in the background is the potential fall of the US dollar or the fall of fiat, or they reset it or what have you. And so we need to have assets, physical assets, and we have to have a lifestyle that's sustainable even if there was no money.
Yeah, I think the other way to look at it is there's no way we're not going to go through a period of inflation, or China has started to move into deflation for the next period of time. But that's going to actually help us acquiring properties and helping us attract people. The value of the dollar, I can't see that. I just can't see that happening. I can see inflation and deflation, but the use of the dollar as the world currency, there's just no chance on the fucking
I
horizon.
think all fiat currencies will go through a cycle. And what is it? Something like 95% of all currencies ever introduced in the world has now died, right?
Yeah, they lose
And
their
the dollar is
for the
on
same
that.
reason.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they
the
have to
dollar's on the
have-
last leg.
They have to have something to go to. And I'm really surprised and thrilled, frankly, that institutional support has kept Bitcoin alive through what I expected to be a really hard crash. And so now that we have institutional support, that means people are willing to throw $1 billion at it if necessary to preserve it as an object. In other words, alternative.
Well, but Curt, Bitcoin did crash in its traditional sense. It retraces value 80% of the way,
Right.
which is it has done in all previous cycles. So everything is going according to schedule,
No,
basically.
I'm agreeing. The difference is who produced the survival of Bitcoin was interesting in that it ended up being people with big money who see this as a useful tool present, and future. And I just think that's fascinating.
Yeah, so maybe especially with the Bitcoin spot ETF talk and everything. So maybe the smart money have seen something that the regular folks
The smart
either
money
have
sees
or
a
have not
hedge.
seen.
Right now, your only way of
Hedge against the
preserving
dollar.
your only way of preserving money right now is continuous rotation of oil prices. And that's your only play. I mean, that's how you preserve money, or finding some
Well, that's how the
alternative.
petrodollar came into existence. But before we get too far off track, I do think that we should definitely have our answer, like a natural law deep dive into money substitutes, crypto, that type of stuff. Because if we're trying to have incentives that can align and organize people to be productive, have high agency and good relationships and high trust and all that type of thing, we should take a swing at a currency that can do that. Obviously, the colonial script is one that I point to that worked. It was a flexible script and it worked for the early colonialists. And we have probably a sense of why, Protestant work ethic and high trust and productive people and homogeneous and that type of thing. Well, it doesn't mean that we can't create another version that is a money substitute. And I don't care if we have some fictional clown world bullshit that's out there. I just really want to make sure that our people can have sustainability like dachas. I think maybe that was the word, these little family farms, that they have something that if shit really hits the fan, the elites have bunkers and they've got mercenary teams to fucking maybe protect them.
But that's not even a
massive
sustainable
unrest.
solution for them, because eventually they're going to run out of those resources.
I get
They
it.
don't
but
have that
I
trust.
want a version, I want a scaled down, dumbed down version for our guys that are more than willing to put the effort and the work in and obviously keep smart advances as they can. But basically, if everything went to hell in a handbasket, I want that we don't have bunkers where we fucking hide in our multi-million-dollar underground tunnel cave bullshit. That we have people that are still in beautiful environments. If the money switch goes off, they still go out and work and share and trade and exchange and whatever. Like they're almost like the Amish and can just totally survive the thing. But we do it. We don't have the neurotic, religiosity in it. We don't have the funky whatever. We're just
High tech, high culture Amish.
Yeah. There you go.
With guns.
The more you talk about it, the more it sounds like Fallout. You have these like vault dwellers and the Brotherhood of Steel.
Curt often talks about how the dollar is essentially a share in the economy. Well, what we could do is create a DAO. I think that's the correct term for it. It's a distributed company where all of these investments are done through that, and you participate. And there may be times when people get paid a little bit in fiat, and a little bit in the DAO's currency, or you can say, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to take a vacation at the place Bryan's running down in Tennessee, and I show up there and I'm just going to pay in the currency I already earned before, and we work it out so that it's viable.
Right.
That actually is better than Bitcoin, because at the moment Bitcoin is struggling to create the ecosystem around it, and they will, I think, get there. But it's a struggle because it's not a share of a particular economy. This creates a share of a particular economy. It's way better than any other crypto.
And that's
If
like
Trump
exactly what
kicks
I was
in and
thinking. Like,
prohibits Fed coin, Bitcoin is guaranteed, because that's my whole argument about the survivability of it is predicated on the deterministic evolution of a Fed coin. If Trump gets in there and we get a hard prohibition on that thing, we kill that initiative, then Bitcoin becomes, by definition, the alternative, the liquid means of alternative value provisioning.
What do you mean by a prohibition? Prohibition on crypto?
No, CBDCs.
Trump is taken from, I can't, if it's Vivek he got it from. He said kill Fed coin, right? Kill federal digital currency.
He's concerned about the privacy rights violations that will come along with it. I don't think it's the economic issues.
No, I agree with you, but for me, I'm concerned about it from privacy and fucking manipulation issues, right?
Mhm.
I don't like the idea of cash going away because, well, the value of cash going away is all the little mom and pop immigrant restaurants that don't pay taxes would have to pay taxes, but they don't move the needle. So, but the real answer is that they've been able to manipulate us too easily.
I think he saw what happened in China. China is essentially a cashless society, and the government has taken over, what is it, WeChat Pay or whatever,
Yes.
and everybody's just scanning QD marks and so on. But also they took it to the 10th level during the pandemic, in that if you don't have that good citizen, like you're not contagious or whatever, you can't even freaking get into a taxi.
Mhm. I was gonna say, like, I agree. I was thinking of very along the same lines as Noah, as far as like there's some value to Bitcoin because it is totally decentralized, but there is also some value to having an institution that is kind of backing a currency, and that there is a kind of a trust, or there is a share. Obviously, our government has that side of it, but also that institution is corrupted. So maybe there's an in between where it's like there is a little bit of an institution, maybe there's a little bit of decentralized as well. But there's also definitely a lot of trust and kind of things backing it as far as what the share that you're investing in. So I like that.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I agree that there's the share of an economy is a good frame on it. And also I want to bring back that all future comes from mothers and fathers and loving children. Like if the economy doesn't bring in the population aspect, and we're off the mark. It isn't just about increasing stupid fucking debts. Like I'd love Curt's other idea about credit expansion. You can increase credit, or you can test credit to make sure people are credit worthy. That's something that we could do in this, cousin confederacy family network. I think it ties into, so if each family kin and kith had a token and they had their own token, then what's the value of their token? Well, it's how productive that they can be amongst themselves, how sustainable, kind of like their mini economy. They have a share in their mini economy. And if you do it to the degree of first to fifth cousins, you're probably upwards of 15,000 people that should be able to do damn near anything within that. So that's where the 1,000 Nations Bloom, we can actually put the template on 1,000 Nations Bloom. And if some family starts printing or minting like crazy and they're hyperinflating their own token, or they're doing stupid shit, well, then they deserve to go bust with their token. But I just don't think that will happen with giving them restraint around. It's got to be reciprocal, fully informed, warranted, free from the imposition of costs on others, and voluntary exchange. So there's things that we can do, I think, to have incredible advances in economies that work for and of loving families as a basis.
You called it. I mean, I've heard this idea, which I love from you before. You even had. I mean, you called it like family coin, I believe. We pitched like different ideas for it and names, and like kind of having it tied to even genetic level basis through the technology. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there, I think.
Well, and
here's
the esoteric side is that we talk about people having bad karma or family karma. It also answers when Jews try to say, well, that's not all Jews, and why don't you call out the individuals? You try to then make it so granular that it's exhaustive. No, call out the families, like the fucking Sackler family that did all the opioids and shit like that. Like that whole family should be fucking blackballed, and every fucking cousin of the Sackler family should be absolutely blackballed and put on an outlaw list because they benefited from that shit, right? And like if my family has some bad fucking karma in it, I have some cousins that did some fucking wicked shit, it's some degree is on my shoulders as well. And I should take the burden of that because I want to clean it up and I want to create good karma and good credit going forward. Now imagine a family that has been fucking doing the right things for a long, long time, and all their cousins have been doing the right thing. Like they just got some good juice that's running through them, their genetics, their genetic expression, their environment, everything, their grammar fields, the way they think through things is just so good, true, and beautiful that they have an incredible line of credit. I want to know that. I want to celebrate it. I want to give them awards. I want to see how my family can marry in.
We also, by doing that, create an incentive for the groups to police themselves. And that's how you can't have a high trust society of people that need constant policing.
Right.
Because you'll never be able to police them faster than they can be corrupt. And so when they
Responsibility
police
coin.
themselves, yeah, as they police themselves, that becomes less of a need. The difficulty is that right now people don't even want to be responsible for themselves, let alone their children, let alone their cousins. And
Right.
so we're going to push them in that direction through incentives.
It's a big
And you're
hug
right,
of
though.
domestication. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and you're right that we're going to do it by demonstration.
Yes.
And then now let me throw in one more other wild idea that would actually innovate law. We know we're not getting justice anymore. We know that. I mean, maybe you're getting, okay, throw out the exceptions or whatever. But imagine if this family coin also somewhat ties into this good karma, bad karma, that type of stuff. I'll just throw an example. Say I'm here and actually I have a real example. My son was hanging out after a dance or something and riding in a car, and he left his phone in this car with two other guys that he kind of knew that were acquaintances. One of them started playing around with his phone, trying to unlock it, that type of stuff. And then the driver said, "Hey, don't do that. Just, put it here in this console. We'll get it back to him later." The passenger kid apparently rolled down the window at some stop sign and threw my son's phone out of the car and hit the sign and basically just destroyed it. So my son in quiet dealt with the situation for maybe about a week, and then he got dad involved. And dad made some phone calls, asked the parent, the father, and the mother. I mean, I got a number of people involved with this situation. They kind of put their hands up. Well, we don't know if that exactly happened. That's not what my son would do. He wouldn't do something like that. And as we whittled it down, in fact, it was more likely that he did do it. And I was like, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to replace it? Or he's like, kids will be kids. Was basically after all of that, after basically getting to a point that agreed, it was like, well, kids will be kids. So here's where I'm going with in terms of just, silly kind of justice type of thing, is that if I could then tag that family of like, okay, they don't know how to be high trust. That's and the cost is, $500, $800, family tokens, credits, or whatever. Let's say that kid then goes on and he does something else and he starts to accrue these debts because he's just being a little dirtbag. And that family is not policing themselves, as you said, Noah. At some point, if it gets big enough, I think there should be like levels of war that you could declare war on a family that's fucking just being complete douchebags. They're not reciprocal. They're not high trust. They're just demonstrating low trust, degenerate behavior. And obviously there's tiers before you call full out war. But that's the way I see that we could innovate the legal system where it then becomes decentralized. And we get to implement more of like what our understanding is and how we would science
That's
it.
just a transparent
It's a
escalation.
credit system.
Yeah, it's a decentralized social credit system. See, the
Right.
problem with social credit system, when I heard about it, I was like, oh, that sounds fantastic. I'd love to be able to exclude some idiots from living near me or whatever I can do. The problem is when it's centralized, it's prone to capture and corruption. If it's decentralized, that's much more difficult. You have to corrupt large numbers of people. And if you can do that, you could corrupt any system. And so we're back at square one.
And this social credit system used to be decentralized in the times when we're living in closely knit towns and villages and so on. When you have a Dunbar number, right, then you absolutely have a social system. You have a social credit system. Everybody knows like who's trustworthy, who isn't trustworthy, and over generations, the non-trustworthy ones gets weeded out. The problem now is the scale is much bigger, and someone from across the country can move next to you, and you have no idea whether this person is trustworthy or not.
Right. And there's going to be a distinction
we used to outlaw that young man. If this had happened in one of the German principalities in the 1800s, he would have been forced to pay the damages. Actually, it would have been extracted from his parents, who would have made him work it off.
Right.
And he probably would have got assigned to a number of hours of work in the community cleaning stuff up. They did a lot of community service. He may have even spent some time in the stocks, because nothing corrects a teenager's behavior better than public humiliation.
Right.
And he's unlikely to have done it, and probably would have corrected his ways. And if he didn't, he'd eventually get outlawed, and that was basically as bad as being as having a death sentence, because you were now outside the protection of the law, and anyone could extract from you if they wanted to without any repercussions. We used to hold people accountable in very serious ways that didn't require a massive policing and what do you call it, prison state in order to make it work. And we're going to have to go back to that again, because what we're doing now is not working.
So to make two more points, the distinction between civil and criminal, if it can be restitution could be paid to make it whole, then obviously we're more on the civil side. If restitution cannot happen, then we're moving towards the criminal. One of our sticking points in our 5 principles is warranted, and that has not been, we haven't really operationalized that enough, meaning that there probably needs to be bonds that are put up for obviously some of the civil side. I can explain it maybe in the crypto world is something called protocol owned liquidity, where people can then cash out their tokens kind of at any time, and it doesn't really bring down the whole thing. And then the second thing is that this justice and this economic system comes back to this mother and father who love each other and children. It's really that bottleneck of the future that we move into, is that we give them the responsibility again of domesticating, raising, maturing their children in a healthy way with some input, so that the system kind of, oh, well, this makes sense and I'm agreeing to it. If it's voluntary and if you do not want to participate in it, well, that's another choice as well. And as you said, you don't get the benefits from it.
When the more successful the family, the greater their threshold for forbearance.
Yeah, I'll definitely repeat something I've kind of thought of a few times, which is we definitely, it's worth having a kind of a, I don't know, like a division, department, project, at least, to kind of really focus on, like you were saying, Bryan, just some of these ideas that are in this area, because definitely the currency will be essential to everything. It's it's a whole sector of the trifunctional. It's something that has to absolutely be part of our plan of attack. So, and I would be more than willing to help organize and be a part of that. I know I've already spun off some little efforts like it and conversations like it in the past, and so maybe we can keep setting up some small focus groups and keep that conversation going, because I mean, yeah, it's critical. Anything else on the agenda for today?
So I want to bring the discussion back down to the 50-foot level. What's next steps? So all these long-term goals are great. We need to move. We need to take one step at a time.
Yeah, I will say one idea I'm having right now that ties into this conversation we're having is we could go ahead and start experimenting with some of the technology and creating some platforms to help manage this kind. We could experiment, and this is a huge thing we can do. We're talking about it would be beautiful if this was on a national scale. Well, what we can start doing is demonstrate that it works on smaller scales, right? Like even within our own organization. This is something I thought about before. Like we start having we start playing around with this idea of a token that's kind of equated to your effort, the effort that you invest into the organization and stuff. Like we're keeping track of that. We're accounting for that. And that kind of incentivizes people to get involved, and it kind of becomes the blueprint to start to scale that out to the family level and the town level and so on. So that's just, and I can help again. Like I said, I will be setting up some meetings and additional conversations to explore these threads that like Bryan is kind of starting. And then beyond that, in particular, obviously the event is the other big kind of next step thing that we're focused on as well. So I think we have some plans of action there as well, as far as, we're still looking to find a property or a place to host it. And what else?
I want to throw in that Brad would be willing to participate in acquiring a property like that. And he's shown me quite a few of them, actually. I don't think that would be hard to raise money for. if we had enough of a plan.
You mean just for the sake of the event or some longer term property for the Institute?
For long term.
Okay.
And I don't think that would be, I would think by later this year, raising money for that would be fairly easy to do by the end of the year.
I'm assuming, Francis, obviously we have a document for planning this event, but I'm assuming y'all still definitely have like just an overall NLI document as far as like the focus
What do you
projects and
think I'm
efforts.
sitting here doing while you're talking?
He's got it pulled up. Okay, good deal.
And all like strategic plan.
All righty, good. I just want to make sure.
And then the other
I can't consolidate what you guys are saying into concrete actions. And I think that's what I don't think that, because I know Francis and I have come up to the same business model. So we look at it, and I think that we would want to bring it down to lower level. But the idea that you could, we could take franchising, which using the church as one, all right, and then do our own founding instead of franchising with properties. That's pretty good, and it does bridge that interesting gap between recreating the civil society, creating institution of inner learning, a monastery, and creating an institutional formation for an education system like an institute or college. Like you're getting toward the natural deterministic end is to recreate the Epicurean model before the Christian churches took it over and converted all the Epicurean dorms into monasteries.
I almost think of it as the medieval guild.
Yes.
But instead of a guild focusing on just one particular trade, this is a guild for creation of agentic men.
Well, this is what fraternities also did up until about 1910. And the government squashed them because it wanted to take over that role of providing for the lower people. Used to be the fraternities were usually racially based. Like, if you were from Sicily, you went to the Sicilian fraternity in New York. You get off the boat, you go and you show up and you go, I'm from Sicily. Who's your dad? So and so. What town you from? So and so. Okay, you're vetted. Here's a bunk and 3 meals a day. We're going to get you a job, and if you're successful, you're going to then hire guys from your fraternity. You're going to send money back into your fraternity because it's what helped you get up, and it becomes your tribe. And we're doing something
that's the origin,
not only on a different scale.
That's the origin of the Anglo and certainly the American statement of don't mix church and state. It's because when the agrarian revolution kicked off in the 1700s, what happened was the people started moving into cities. This is even before the Industrial Revolution. And they started moving into cities as they were not either pushed off or moved off the farm. And what the churches did is they provided that function. So the fraternities became a secular version of the churches, and to some degree they performed a class function. The churches were the lower and the fraternities were the middle. So yeah, absolutely. So there's great historical precedent for this. I'm trying to think of how many people do you really think would take to bring a property into being? And Brandon said 6. I'm thinking it's less than 12.
I mean,
It
depends
how
on the
well
size of the banner.
The funny thing, I'm watching this morning, because I subscribe to a whole bunch of these people who rebuild chateaus in France, right? And it's like a husband and wife take on a fucking, it's one thing to bring up like 7 or 12 rooms, right? In one of these, because it's basically a large stone house, right? That's okay. But one of these guys is taking on a wreck. It's like burned down twice, right? There's half of the brickwork is falling apart. And another group, they'll buy a thing that, I mean, it's still got the original decorations and goofy armor and all other shit, but basically the paint is falling off the walls. But all this shit's being done by couples, and they don't actually have a lot of money.
And they're not particularly skilled at that. They learn as they go.
Right, and so, I mean, it's not like we're lacking evidence that this can be done. I mean, unfortunately, America doesn't have a lot of territory with 600 years of these things, right? Or 1,000 years of them, but we do have some territories that have 100 or 200 years of them.
I'm thinking Rust Belt for a
Yes.
place where you basically get, what is it, underwater or undervalued properties. You're not going to find one in Bellevue, that's for sure.
Well, and we don't necessarily have to buy the properties. We can make our participation an attraction element of other people that are interested in buying
Right.
properties. You know, Tyler mentioned earlier, he's looking at, where do I buy a house? If we had a local work group that he could plug into, that would raise the value of him looking at that area for buying his own property, because we can plug a local work group into rehabilitating the property that he picks up far cheaper than anywhere else. We don't have to necessarily be the ones buying all these properties.
Interesting. Hold on. We start oh fuck, this is evil. We start a credit union, and then we can lend out 10 times or more the deposits for the purpose. Yeah. Oh my God, I love this fucking.
And then we know our guys don't default, or have less of a chance of default because of the concurrent commonality.
Yeah. That's probably the model. We open
Let
up.
me add something here, is that you can always find a fixer upper deal pretty much in any market,
Mhm.
but you won't get a discount on a premium trophy property unless the market is bad, the economy is bad.
I don't know, dude. I mean, you know what this website? What is this website?
Here's the thing:
I think
is
real
really
estate is
big
highly
property.
local. It's the
Yeah.
local economy, not
Yeah.
just the national economy.
Also, there are times California was going through this where wealthy people were moving out of some of the areas that they had there, and the houses, they dropped by 60-70% in a year, and it was because they were what California did was they put some tax on, if you have so many rooms you pay a bigger tax. Well, what people were doing then is they were buying them, they were theoretically subdividing them. In reality, they did nothing to the house whatsoever. It's just a line on the floor. And now they don't have that. It's a multifamily dwelling instead of being a house with 20 rooms. And around the law and getting a really good deal on these houses until the rich people caught on and balanced it back out and stopped selling.
So
We
yeah,
got
there's some
see, the thing is,
asymmetries.
opportunity. The better the opportunity, the quicker it's gobbled up. And when we have a network of thousands of guys out there keeping their eyeballs peeled, we'll be on top of everything before anyone else. We have that intelligence network out there. Then
Could we buy a Jewish seminary? Would that be fun? We start with one?
Build some tunnels underneath.
only
Oh, that was good. I didn't see that coming.
only if someone removes the mattress.
Only if the
Wait, someone
tunnels are
removes the
used as
mattresses?
indoor
Oh
gun
God, you
ranges.
guys are bad.
Just please take your mattresses with you.
The tunnels that go over to the bathhouse, the Shishka or something like that. Boy. I still of the belief that you can always find a good deal. And I agree that if you have local guys that know a little more, it's that asymmetry of information. Yeah, they have it on the market for 1 million, but I'll tell you, they'd probably take 500,000.
Oh, absolutely.
The best properties normally aren't even for sale.
You know,
Because
I
2 or
told
3
you this
years
guy's
before
story,
the
but
guy
I'm
gets
very-
desperate. Yeah.
I
ahead.
told the story, but I'm meaner than, I mean, I have like personalities, right? My money pot personality is just not a very good person, right? So when I was about buying companies in 2001 because the crash, right? We bought, I won't mention the name, we bought a good company, right? A company that had been a $20 million company, right? We bought that company, and my partner wouldn't let me make the bank pay us to take it. And I could have gotten
Right.
the bank to pay us to take it. Instead, they gave us enormous credit line, a bunch of other stuff. If we would pay them, I don't know, it was like 75 grand or 100 or 200 grand. It was nothing, right? And we bought with it, I don't know, $6 million worth of revenue, a revenue stream. So, I
So
mean,
that's the type of stuff, and tied into what Luke said, is that we don't necessarily have to buy the property. There could be a creative deal. We can create a new LLC. We can create a partnership. There's all sorts of ways to make a deal happen. So I like that. Obviously, if we can buy a bank or a credit union and we can produce our own loans for 10%, that's probably a smart way to go.
And don't worry, we won't stop you if you add any of those really good deals, Curt.
Yeah, and I think banks are coming up for sale
We have
now.
no problem with
I don't know.
stuff.
I'm thinking, Brian's got the nice guy thing going on, and I got the asshole thing going on. I'm thinking that combination of good cop, bad cop is just fuck. It's all over. I don't think there's any chance anybody walking out of that one.
Well, there should be some credit unions coming up for sale because a lot of these have went bust when they bought a bunch of bonds and they became illiquid. So it seems like there's a lot of smaller banks that are going belly up.
Yeah, it's a good way.
Well, yeah,
If you found
there's-
one, you got to go through a lot of paperwork. If you buy it, there's less paperwork.
No, it's real. You can, it depends on what you want. For us, what we want to make sure is we have access to we don't want to go through all the rigmarole of getting the credit card insurance, the credit card stuff, right? That's a pain in the ass, right? If you buy a bank, you're automatically already in the Fed system. So you have that. They already have some number of customers, right? Right? They already have software and processes and procedures. So when you buy a bank, which costs nothing, it's great. If you want to start a bank, it's about 75 grand, but right, that you don't have all this other stuff. On the other hand, the software for running a purely online bank costs nothing. I mean, I can't remember what it is, but it's, because there's 10 versions of it out there that are good. They're all rated online. So,
And it's really an investment bank. We're focused on using the money to invest and getting that return on it versus we're just here to cash your paycheck and that kind of stuff.
well, I mean, for the most part, if you have, you need to, as a bank, to have the ability to accept credit cards, issue debit cards, and then have a cash machine for at least one cash machine for emergencies. That's it, right? And if you started as a credit union, you don't have to adhere to all the different rules and regulations that a bank does, because there's classifications of banks based on their market. So if we're not trying to invest in commercial properties or whatever. We're just trying to put a place together where people can pool their money, and by pooling their money, take advantage of credit expansion, which is all that a community, which is the whole reason you build a bank, is to take advantage of credit expansion. You put $100,000 in, now you got $1 million to play with. Right? You put 200,000, I got $2 million with it. It depends. I mean, the reserves for some of these banks are down to 5%. I think there's some banks with 0%, getting close to 0% reserves, right? And your reserves are predicated primarily on the ability to handle runs. Well, it's hard to run in a credit union because you're not taking any risk. The only thing you're gambling on is the people that belong to you. So we start a credit union. Then we use the credit union for the people to acquire a property through credit expansion. And then we get all those people to use the bank as their banking service. We've essentially created what Brian's been shooting for without having to start it all up separately. And we still have FDIC insurance. And you know where FDIC is going now, right? I mean, they're going to insure all the money that people deposit in the bank. And they're going to say, well, fuck investors, but we're insuring the citizens, because they can do that now. All right, am I talking too much about nerdy shit? Okay, I'll just.
I like it.
So we were talking about concrete next steps. So concrete next steps is we're building the funnel with John that's going to bring in a particular group of guys, dynamic energy to go out and do stuff. So that's going to be great. I'm working with Brandon and other guys and John as well. We're building that funnel to reach out to the strong families.
Yep.
And now we start funneling people in. And as people get funneled in, and we have products for the strong families as well. I have products for that. I know exactly what they need. I've written up more or less what would be the courses and other things for them. And we need to help them as well to network with each other. Family men today are more lonely than they've ever been in history. And they believe that their struggles in their family are somehow really bad and unique, when in reality, everybody's going through the same thing and it's really not that bad. And if you could talk to each other about it, you'd feel pretty good about how good your family is. So we can provide those types of things, a community for them where it is families on the same path. We can help shepherd them towards the same path. And what that is to ascend into an aristocracy where they have a level of sovereignty that they do not have now. Now they're at the mercy of the upper elites. They will have their own level of sovereignty. And once we have started to establish that, there'll be a snowball that'll grow and grow, because we will encourage men. This organization you are stronger if you bring in other men like you and their families. And so they have a huge incentive to do that. We do this for a couple of years. Not only do we have all of the auxiliary benefits, the businesses and things we can create from it, we have an incredible influential power over people who are influential. And we're all going in a direction which is beneficial to the public at large. And this is what I see the next step is continuing to open these funnels. Once the funnels are open and the people are coming in, then we can discuss exactly how to use that energy, whether it be one business or another or bank or another. But we need the energy coming in first, and the money from that.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of it for me goes back to just the need to get more people involved and kind of just like grow our network. I mean, that's something I'm always thinking about, and yeah, I'm definitely on board with that as well.
I consider that my job. Top of the funnel. So
What do you
I'm gonna
consider
be
your job?
top of the funnel, or part of my job at least, to just bring in more attention, eyeballs, more guys, high quality
Yep.
men.
Well, your work is beautiful so far. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful.
I feel like I'm somewhere in the
It's
middle of
good to
that
hear.
funnel. I feel like I can kind of, out of the mass market, I can start to break down some of those, some of those demographics. What are the idea camps you belong to? How can we translate the law into something that's going to, that works for you, that's going to get you more involved? How can we incentivize you to get more involved? That kind of thing. And then as it kind of goes from there to get more intimately involved for the organization, for the highest agent, for those kind of guys, that's where I would definitely, I think Martin does a great job of that kind of like part of the funnel, so to speak, among others. So I think we're
And
already
Brandon's
built.
been, sorry.
No, you. I was just saying we're doing it. We're already setting that up, and it's exciting to see.
And Brandon's been reaching out to various groups. I think you're starting with church groups, and one's connected with schooling for kids. And that's so we're reaching to the individuals and we're reaching to the groups. The reason is there is a huge section of the population that's not on any social media. And what it is they're usually involved in a group. We're on social media because we have something to present. But if you had nothing to present, why would you be there if you have local friends? Would you want to go on Facebook or go hang out with real people? And so there's groups out there. Brandon's reaching out to the groups of people who are meeting in real life. So we're covering all of the different groups that we could cover by these different approaches. And we're going to start bringing in good people, and we will do it. Lucas said this before, make it up as we go along. Like we're bringing it in and just kind of figure it out as we go. We'll get the filters and all of that stuff going as it comes in. The main thing is to get more people coming in that are in some way investing into the program.
One of the big challenges we have, we recognize the importance of people willing to show up. Right, we've been talking about that for years. Right now, showing up is a risk, right? What we're doing with a lot of these efforts, and the reason why they're important, and one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that we're recreating the value of showing up.
Yes.
We're expanding the value of showing up. We're teaching people that showing up is valuable through all these efforts. Because right now, showing up is just risk. Look at what's happening with all the J6 stuff. Showing up is just risk, right? So what we're doing with all these local initiatives is we're retraining our entire society to show up, that showing up is valuable, that it's worth the risk. This is why you're getting plugged into these things, by showing up. So all of these things, that's, it's a huge factor of all these things that we have to keep in mind. And so we want to be loose in a lot of our filtering right now, because we have to teach everybody the value of showing up. That's the bottom of the hierarchy. The power that they can express is showing up. And it scales as you go up the hierarchy. But at the very bottom, at the very base of the hierarchy, that is your access to power, is showing up. But right now, it's all risk. We have to restore the value of that. So
that's like a powerful slogan. I mean, that's something we can put on a t-shirt as well. Just like show up. I mean, that's just like huge. That just needs to be like a mantra almost. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, presence is actually it's a position on the spectrum of use of force. It's a least, right? But it goes from there.
So
Which
just
means
in
it's
creating these
it's
groups,
the
we're actually
beginning of
restoring
exercising
value
your
to
power.
showing up.
Sorry, I want to hear what both of you said, and I didn't hear either of them because you were saying it at the same time. Luke, can you go, and then Noah?
Yeah. So what I mean is, and the reason why some of this we can figure out as we go is because just in creating these groups, we're restoring value to showing up. Just in
Yes.
creating access to other humans locally, we're restoring value and showing up. We're conveying, by facilitating this, by fostering this, we're conveying the awareness that these people have your back. And people are so disconnected from that right now. Nobody feels like anybody has their back. So why would anybody show up to anything, right? That's one of the big things that we're restoring in these efforts, and it has to be part of that, right? So we can't lose sight of that. With all the things we want to do with it is great, but this is bottom of the hierarchy stuff that we have to keep in mind, that we're building into all of these structures that we're creating now. So
Yes.
And as Francis said, if showing up is the first step in the force continuum, it's also the first step in taking back your own power. And I think that's a way that a lot of people will be able to understand it. You want power, the first thing you have to do is show up. That is the minimum. If you haven't gone that far, you're ceding power. And you're either ceding power or you're taking power. There's no neutral. There's no way to tread water.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah,
tie back to the evolutionary that Curt talked about? Is that everything goes to grow in mass and energy consumption? So you're either ceding power or you're taking power, so you're growing in mass and energy.
Makes sense on all scales.
As you guys are talking, I'm starting to see a solution to a problem that Curt has outlined many times that we've talked about, which is how do we actually mature the right? How do we take people that no one has taught them to actually act responsibly, because there's not that many ways for them to do it because no one's providing it. But if we just get guys to show up, if that's our t-shirt slogan, show up, we're training them to be responsible. And of course, the ones that are just not going to do it, they're filtered out right away. The ones that actually show up, most of them will probably be able to work with in some way, shape, or form.
Hell yeah.
Most of the hardcore fraternities, especially the borderline outlaw ones, you have to show up to the weekly meeting. If you miss 2 weekly meetings in a row, you can be kicked from the group. Doesn't matter how long you've been there. Unless you're dead or in the hospital or something like this. Like if you're not in prison or the hospital, you show up. And they have very strict rules on this stuff. And it doesn't matter how far you live from where they meet. Doesn't matter any of that. That's your problem to sort out. Because what they say is that's up to you. That's your agency if you want to be in the group or not. It's very important that we have that natural filter. But it also, as you said, is training men to have take responsibility and have agency. And when they show up, we will start to see where they need to be trained further. We don't want to treat them like children, but we also want to know what they need, and we can only tell that when they've shown up and we've met them and we get together. That's why we'll build it as we go.
Absolutely. There's also a solution to, like I've thought for a while as I've been thinking about this, hierarchy, getting guys in a hierarchy doing something productive, like what we're talking about here, is a big part of the solution to everybody just has their own opinion and they purity spiral on everybody else who doesn't agree 100% perfectly. If you're showing up to restore a mansion, like who cares about your opinion about whatever? No one cares. And you're obeying the guy who's the leader because he's demonstrated he's supposed to be the leader. He's demonstrated competence. So if you're a guy who all you've ever done is play video games in your mom's basement, yet you have all these opinions and you don't agree with anybody, and you can't work with anybody, all that has to go out the window. You show up and you do something productive, or you don't matter.
Or else you go out the window.
Or else you go out the window. And then, because you're doing something productive, then you generate a little bit more tolerance for each other if you don't agree on. Now, our guys at the beginning, we probably agree on the vast majority of things anyway. But I see in this a solution to certain problems that were hard to see solutions to before.
Well, it used to be that men had to earn the right to have an opinion.
Right.
It didn't come to you just because you existed and could yap loudly. And nowadays we let people have opinions because they can sign up for a social media account.
Correct.
All of that's corrected in real life.
Correct. That's it. That's the solution.
Hell yeah.
Well, we're also kind of missing what Luke talked about, that a mature adult is a mother and a father. So again, it comes back to the funnel. That I think men will show up because there's an opportunity and there's incentive. Most of Western expansion was agency and economic opportunity, right? Like you could say some of these other freedoms and things like that, but there was a lot of economic opportunity. But the part I think that we've moved into that we lost from losing the European village is the family dynamic, the aristocratic of pairing for product of good breeding. And we don't have that. And so we have a lot of men that, man, we got a major pathway for sex. There's no doubt about that. Our brains are wired for sexual opportunity. So you got to think of these opportunities and what would have them mature. Obviously, we don't want hypergamous men or women. It doesn't really work for society. So if we get that maturity arc, gets them towards being a good mother and father who love each other and have big families with lots of brothers and sisters, so they can learn all their social adaptation and capabilities by playing and roughhousing, but then learning from their sister of how do they talk to girls and all that type of stuff. I keep coming back to it because even if you're throwing out ideas, if we don't have a future that focuses on this foundation, like we're saying, politics, that the central unit, the political unit, the base political unit is the family, then we need to be reinforcing that over and over again, including desires for maturing adults. These young men will show up, swing hammers, especially if it gives them an opportunity to increase their sexual market value, which is a bit abstract. I don't necessarily like that game framing of it. That's why I keep bringing in the cousin idea, which is going to take more technological work, but it's something that we could be good at. Whereas we start to bring these family houses, it's like unused and underutilized assets, that there are these scattered to the wind aristocracies that are out there that want to reform. And we want to bring those back together, those cousins, and encourage them to 1, 2, 3 strong towns, wherever they go. That's why I was saying there could be a big incentive. And I'll give you guys a weird story of why you want to remember this. I have a distant cousin who owned a bank. John something, and it was in Council Bluffs, Iowa. And I think I've told this story back in the Good Dudes a while back, and I went there. And so a cousin, distant cousin, whatever, said, you need to go, maybe John Dean, I think that was it. You got to see John Dean. And, he owns this Council Bluffs credit union or something like that. And he's he's a relative on your grandma's side and that type of stuff. Well, this friend of the family took me in there, but I heard him on the phone call when he said, I got one of your cousins here. And John Dean goes, is she cute? This perverted, like 80-year-old guy was obviously interested in spreading his seed with a distant cousin that in his horny mind that can obviously still produce seed was interested in breeding. So I put that out there because there is a genetic drive that we can try to optimize near breeding. And I've said it plenty of times, if we're not consciously eugenic, we're going to be unconsciously dysgenic. And so I want that to also be a frame of what we're doing here, is that we're trying to bring families back together. And we want to give them all of their cousins in some form and give them all the advantages that they can so that they can build karmic credit. They can take care of their karmic debts, that type of stuff. Is that I want to see that as a background, and I want to just make sure that that frame is not missed.
The moral of the story is unleash your inner John Dean. I got it.
But one of the keys too that men are missing right now in the dating market, and this is my area that I'm looking at, is that they are out there facing the dating market alone. They have no structure, nothing. The reality is that alpha type guys have no problem with women. Their problem is they got a whole bunch of excess women, what to do with them, especially if they want to settle down. What normally happens is that if you're the alpha in the group, you make sure the men in the lower tiers of the hierarchy have wives.
Right.
Around the time you settle down, if I'm going to settle down, I got to settle down my guys too. And so you go and you make sure they have the help they need. It's great having a dating coach and all that, but if you got a local friend who knows women and is going to help you find one and vet one, you can't beat that and you can't pay for that. There's nowhere that you can buy that. And when we're creating these groups, they will form into those hierarchies, and men will get the things they need. They're going to get the male camaraderie ship, and they're also going to find women that they need. It is so much easier to find a woman when you're with a group of men than when you're by yourself, because women are attracted to groups of men because they can judge them, whereas individual men are very difficult to judge because they can't see where he fits in the hierarchy or if he's even in one.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but I think all of that is still towards the outbreeding, which can still produce amazing results. I'm going to say it's more like a container. If you have 1,500 cousins between your third and your fifth cousin, that means that, let's say, for the ease of numbers, say it's 1,600 and goes down to half of those are not partnered or married. So now you have 800. Of that, 400 are women. Okay, so 400 women, 400 men within your cousin confederacy. Of those 400, how many have blonde hair, blue eyes that are above 5'7" to 5'11", that type of stuff? It narrows very fast, but it's still within the container of near breeding with your cousins. What this does is it takes away all the extraneous options, and it gives maybe women and men, let's say 4 or 5 options of what could be a good partner. Now, one of them, now you say you go through that and you go, which one has better grammar field that matches mine? And so maybe there's a social media scrape that combines and compares yours to the other. Which one lives closest to me? And you go, okay, well, then that narrows the list to where you are. And then here's a big one, is which one has intact parents and grandparents that want to contribute to the raising of children and grandchildren. So maybe you find out, well, the woman has that as a yes, but the man doesn't. And so it becomes more of an opportunity to go, well, then this cousin's willing to go move towards where this woman is because her extended family is already there. So I want to try to give a little more color and context to what I'm talking about. And I also think that it creates a consensus for women where they can help each other point the fingers towards, oh, you should pair with him, but it's still within this extended cousin bubble. and that they start to notice that if they take all the noise out of the outbreeding, and again, it's voluntary, they don't have to do this, but if they take the noise out and that there's more full accounting for who would be good matches, and generally like either there's a consensus from the women because they feel they would just be great partners and would have a great loving family, and that we help systematize what they're trying to make happen from a relationship and get women involved and invested into this. I think that's what we can do as some of the best systematizers on the planet.
Brian, I see what you're talking about is like a stage 2, and what Noah's talking about is like a stage 1. Let's get our guys out of the wasteland, because it's a total wasteland right now for our men. Let's get them out of the wasteland, and then I can see what you're talking about as an advanced thing. And I just wanted to quickly mention that Tyler in the Pacific Northwest, the interview will be coming out on my channel next week. He didn't mention it in that interview, but he told me he's already helped like 8 guys interact with women better just through personal coaching. So it's an actual example that's already happened of what Noah was talking about, where you get the alphas helping, and then you can start working over time to what you're talking about, Brian.
Yeah.
Very good.
So, gentlemen, we've been going on for about 2 hours. Shall we transition to the working session here and finish the website?
You know,
I
a
think
couple more things knocked out. Sure.
I think I got to drop now, but I appreciate it, boys. Talk
Thanks,
to y'all
Tyler.
soon.
Oh, great. Stay for the chatter and then leave when the work starts.
Oh, it's starting to do work. Ooh, yeah, I got to head out.
Soon as Francis cracks the whip.
I probably should have cracked the whip like half an hour ago. Sorry, Brian.
Francis, can I ask
We
a
need to
couple
get the
of
website done.
Francis, can I ask a couple of really quick questions that will help me? Because I want to make a video today, and I want to make sure these questions, I have them correct. I want to make a video called Exciting Things Are Coming. Here's a list, to just start hyping some of the things that we're talking about. So I want to talk about the conference in Tennessee. So that's the April the 19th through the 21st. We do not have a sign up for that just yet, correct?
No, because that's on the website, and we need to finalize certain things on the website before we can post it. Well, we need to at least have a central theme and like a preliminary list of presentations.
Right. I just want to tell people it's coming. I want people to get it on their calendar. That's my goal. What were you going to say, something, Brandon?
Let's cut the recording.
Okay.
What's that?
Let's cut the recording.
Hey, give me a second here. Zoom. Stop recording.